All right. Hello, all. Let's get started on problem two, which is the sun and all its planets analysis. This is a environment diagram. So we will begin in the global frame. And on line one, we see that we have some function called universe. So we take note and bind that to a function. And we take note that it takes in a parameter sun. And since we defined it in a global frame, the parent is global. Okay, now we look at line 10 and we see that there is a variable d with the value 4. And then p on the next line gets assigned to a list of strings. So first it's the string Mars, then Earth, and then we have a nested list containing Jupiter and Venus. Okay. Now we look at y, which is a function call. So then we want to open up a new frame, F1, that is called on universe, whose parent is equal to global. Okay, so first we want to bind the argument that is passed in. And our argument here is p from the global frame, since that's when we called it. So we draw a pointer to the list. Oops. And then we want to take a look inside the function. So on line 2, we see that t is equal to 0. And then we want to look at the while loop, which is while sun. And essentially what this means is while sun is not an empty list, we want to go inside and take a look at the first element of sun, take the length of it and add it to t. So since our sun is not an empty list, we will look at the first element Mars and take the length of it, which is 4, because when you take a length of a string, it returns the number of characters. So, okay, so now t becomes 4, and then we want to splice sun and reassign it to sun. And when we do this, it actually creates a copy of the list. So then we will have, Earth and then the nested list. We assign that to sun. And we continue. So now our first element is Earth, which has a length of 5. And when we add that to t, t changes to 9. And then following that, when we splice the list from the first index onwards, we get the nested list pointing to Jupiter, Venus. And then after we take the length of the first value again, and here it is this list, which has a length of 2. So then t becomes 11. Okay. Now, when we splice for the last time, sun actually points to an empty list. Because there was only one element. So, okay. Now we move outside of the while loop and go to line 6 with the if condition. And our if condition is t mod d is less than 2. So in our current frame, we have a t with the value 11, and we want to modify D, which we have to look for in the parent of the current frame since it doesn't exist in our current frame. And we see that inside global, we have D is equal to 4, and this is equal to 3. And since 3 is not less than 2, we move on to line 8, which has the return statement. And it tells us that our return value is a function, a lambda function to be specific, that we first see defined on line 8, and its parent is equal to F1 because that is the frame we see it in. Okay, so now that we have the return value for this section, we see that we still have to make a call with no parameters on the return value. So this will then open up another frame with the lambda function from line 8, whose parent is F1. Okay, so now we will look at what the lambda does, and it appends the string Neptune to sun. So since we don't have sun in this current frame, we take a look at the parent, and in F1 we see that sun is pointed to an empty list. So when we append Neptune, this becomes list with the string Neptune. Okay, and the append operation has a return value of none. So our return value for this frame would be none. Okay. So ultimately our y is assigned to okay, let me okay, and I will temporarily delete this line for space. Okay, so then we see z is the length of p, and since we're in the global frame again, p is this list, and we see that it has a length of 3. So z is 3. Okay. So that completes the environment diagram. Next, let's look at the questions. So what is the value of t in the F1 frame when the environment diagram is complete? In F1, we see that t is 11. So that is our answer for this one. And then we look at what is the value of sun in the F1 frame when the environment diagram is complete. And what we see here is sun is this list with the string Neptune. Okay. And then what is the frame of the F2? What frame is the parent of the F2 frame? So in our F2, we see that the parent is F1. And F1 was the frame with the call to universe. Okay. And then what is the y the value of y in the global frame after the environment diagram is complete? Well, we take a look and we see that y is none. Then what is the value of z in the global frame after the environment diagram is complete? You see that z is assigned to 3. And that concludes question 2.